Welcome back to Lovely Storytime, everyone. We are so happy to see you again in this exciting journey. Today we will continue to explore part 19 to 24 of the story, After Breaking Apollo's Heart. Grab your snacks, take a seat, and explore this story together. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. Let's get started. Chapter 19, The Prophecy. Outside the cave. The spring night was serene. Daphne slipped out quietly. Spotting Artemis by the water's edge, the huntress goddess had set aside her quiver and silver bow, sitting casually on a rock, combing her golden hair with a bone comb. Under the soft, veiled moonlight, her flowing locks reflected on the water like a broad satin ribbon rippling with the waves. Daphne felt a sudden pang of unease, as if she'd stumbled upon a forbidden moment. A god's unguarded ease seemed almost sacred, untouchable. She moved to retreat, but Artemis spoke. "Come here." Daphne approached, stopping 2 steps away. She fidgeted, waiting, but as the goddess continued combing, she gazed at the water in silence. After a while, Artemis asked abruptly, "Won't you sit Daphne perched on the nearest rock?" Another awkward pause followed until Artemis broke it. "I don't think I've asked your name." She hesitated, then answered, "Daphne. Your name sounds lovely." Daphne lowered her eyes, smiling. "You're too kind." She didn't know how to handle Apollo's twin sister. She admired, envied, even Artemis's freedom and strength, but her own goals and position made friendship with the goddess impossible. She felt Artemis's probing gaze sweep over her from head to toe. A god's scrutiny was like torture, their eyes sharp as surgical blades, slicing through pretty facades, heedless of the blood spilled, ruthlessly piercing to the soul's core, whether Apollo, Artemis, or even Eros. The god's appraising stares brought a suffocating unease. She feared they'd see through her audacious desires, too grand for her frail existence. "You've been quiet on this journey. I expected you to beg me to let you go," Daphne answered honestly. "I didn't think I could sway your decision." Artemis didn't comment, setting down the comb as if preparing for a serious topic. If Daphne let the goddess steer the conversation, she'd struggle to glean useful information or dodge dangerous questions. She needed to ease the tension. An idea sparked. "If you allow, I'd like to braid your hair." Artemis raised a brow, surprised. The gesture made Daphne freeze. It was identical to Apollo's. Her reaction caught Artemis's eye, and the goddess smiled knowingly. "Everyone says we're alike." Without waiting for a reply, Artemis swept her hair back, tilting her chin. "Go ahead." Daphne stepped behind her, taking the comb and parting the hair into 2 sections, braiding each before coiling them up, securing them with silver pins scattered on the rock. Out of Artemis's direct gaze, she relaxed. Her touch was feather-light, wary of tugging a strand and angering the goddess. But even with care, mistakes happened. Artemis made a soft humph, and Daphne's hands froze. "Keep going. It's fine," Artemis said, waving dismissively, her tone teasing. "You're already better at this than my mother." Leto wasn't skilled at braiding her daughter's hair. Daphne's eyes flicked, finishing the intricate work while offering sincere praise. "Your golden hair is stunning, softer and shinier than the finest silk. Any flower would look perfect tucked into it. I rarely use hairpieces. They get lost hunting." Artemis tilted her head, checking the braids in the water's reflection, her face calm but generous with praise. "It's beautiful." She turned, fixing her gaze on Daphne. "Your hair's lovely too, like a wheat field on a clear autumn day. With such skilled hands, why not braid it?" Daphne touched her loosely tied hair, admitting sheepishly, "It's easier to run like this." The goddess, who hunted with hounds through forests, laughed, clearly relating. But her next words shifted sharply. "You're beautiful, eloquent, and shrewd. Without Eros's golden arrow, I doubt you'd have any special feelings for my brother." As Daphne tried to protest, Artemis's eyes narrowed, shaking her head with a mocking edge. "Go on, then. What's so great about him?" In your eyes, Daphne's scalp prickled. She started with the safest, vaguest praise. "He's noble and kind. Even for a weak nymph like me, he's willing to help." Artemis raised a brow, her teasing growing. "And he," Daphne almost said that, Despite Apollo's sharp words, his actions showed generosity, but that would heighten Artemis's suspicion. She'd been seen at Eros's sanctuary, tainting her innocent victim act, and Apollo's special treatment made her doubly suspicious. Swallowing the thought, Daphne pivoted. "He's very handsome." Artemis blinked, then burst out laughing, but her blue eyes stayed locked on Daphne, unrelenting despite the absurd answer. "Maybe you're right. Without the arrow, I might not have fallen for him, but I might still have felt the same." She turned to the moonlit, rippling water, her voice softening. "I hope he makes his prophecy and gets what he wants." Pausing, she glanced at Artemis, curious yet hesitant, seeking confirmation. "He'll emerge from the temple's depth soon. Right. Per Eros. Apollo would seal himself in the temple's core until his first prophecy was complete. If Daphne escaped too early, even reaching Delphi, she'd get no response from him." "I don't know." Daphne's eyes widened in shock, and Artemis gave a wry smile. Reading fate's patterns and finding meaning in them isn't easy, even for gods. The first prophecy is key to fully claiming that power. Not all gods can bear the burden, nor do all choose to. The words carried weight. Daphne's eyes flickered with curiosity but held back questions. "No harm in telling you. When Apollo and I were born, many goddesses came to Delos, offering gifts. Our grandmother Phoebe, daughter of Uranus and Gaia, meant to pass the prophetic power to me, as she'd received it from her sister Themis, goddess of law and justice, who inherited it from Gaia, mother of all." Artemis stroked her bow, but I wavered, why Daphne couldn't help asking. Inevitably, a god-wielding prophecy sees parts of their own fate. Daphne was surprised. "I thought the fate's spindle and thread only shaped mortal destinies. The primordial goddess Ananke hasn't vanished. Gods are immortal, but if Ananke wills it, she can subtly shift the stars' paths, deciding whether prosperity or pain awaits us. Prophetic power is merely a glimpse into her domain." Artemis gazed skyward. I saw foreknowledge as a shackle, bringing unnecessary doubts and burdens. I value unbound freedom over the offerings gained from oracles. The golden-haired goddess looked at Daphne, her expression unusually tender. "So Apollo took the foundation of prophetic power. It's not repayment, but I feel duty-bound to shield him from fate's harshness." Daphne's lashes trembled. Artemis reached out, tucking a stray lock behind Daphne's ear, an intimate gesture. The cool touch of her fingers sent a shiver through Daphne, and Artemis smiled indulgently, her gentle, uncompromising verdict clear. "I revere Ananke's judgments, and won't misuse my power without cause. Daphne, I hope you give me no reason to harm you." Apollo opened his eyes. Blurry lines and colours swam into view. His first instinct was to seek finer threads between the lines, searching for patterns. There were none. No intricate weave. He realized the broad lines and shapes were the temple's towering pillars, mosaic tiles, and inlaid murals. This was Delphi. His consciousness had fully returned from Ananke's vortex, back to his true form in the temple's heart. His mind's sea brimmed, nearly overflowing. Apollo tightened his lips, forcing down the dizzying throb at his temples. The primordial fate, Ananke, treated all visitors equally. She generously bestowed knowledge of past, present, and future, too much knowledge, heedless of whether the recipient could bear its weight. But her hospitality was a harsh trial. Ananke showed no leniency, not even for Phoebe's heir, son of the king of gods. Apollo couldn't gauge how long he'd lingered in her vortex. Countless causes and effects flooded his mind. Decay and growth, seeds sprouting, flowers wilting, sun rising, moon climbing, all at once. Time lost meaning. He couldn't pass each sight and sound, and even his sense of self grew faint. Only the mystery of weaving patterns burned into his consciousness, layer upon layer threatening to crush him. But he was back in Delphi. Ananke had deemed him worthy. Apollo closed his eyes, then opened them. His vision cleared, his mind's sea calmed. The ordeal left a mark, a chasm into the depths, granting a glimpse of the future, just enough, no more. Titans and Olympians alike couldn't fully embrace Ananke. Now, he had to let his spirit roam, guiding him to the right path to deliver his first prophecy. His pupils dilated, the immortal dark gold rimming his irises thinning to a thread. The golden-haired, blue-eyed son of Leto sat on the tripod stool in the temple's depths, gazing at unseen patterns, his voice weaving syllables into verses from the cave of glimmering shadows, from the flesh of the Thunderlord. A guest ascends the snow-capped peaks of clouds, henceforth to feast eternal with the gods. Apollo didn't raise his voice, but he knew the prophecy's words had reached Olympus and echoed across the sacred dark earth. His awareness of Delphi's nearby lands sharpened. His senses transcended his body, perceiving the grand and the minute alike without turning. He saw his sacred abode in Delphi blaze with light, golden beams piercing the evening sky, like burning stars cascading down, blades of grass by the clear spring swayed in the breeze, basking in the sudden glow. In the temple's outer halls, priests and mortals chanted praises, while nymphs and centaurs in the woods gazed at the radiance, sighing in awe. He smelled the rare spices burning on his altar and caught the fragrant flower scent carried by the warm wind. Flower scent. The faint fragrance stirred a memory. Abruptly, Apollo sensed something amiss. His senses, his awareness, screamed that something meant to be in Delphi was gone. Chapter 20 Willing to Lose. Golden beams pierced the sky, radiating from Delphi. Daphne's heart raced, but she steadied herself, glancing at Artemis after a beat. The golden-haired, blue-eyed goddess met her gaze. Artemis's face was calm, but her eyes were those of a hunter watching a beast poised to bolt, ready to loose a fatal arrow. Daphne's throat tightened with nerves. Fleeing now was a losing bet. How could Artemis not anticipate her best chance to escape was after Apollo's prophecy? Even if she prayed to Apollo for help and he answered, Artemis could eliminate her before he arrived. She had to bide her time, find an opening. Forcing a smile, she feigned curiosity, reaching for the falling specks of light. Delphi's sacred glow, illuminating the evening sky, was fading, dissolving into shimmering dust. The glowing motes vanished on her skin like gentle, warm snowflakes. In that fleeting moment, Daphne's mind stirred with a hazy realization. She couldn't grasp what the light conveyed, only sensing it was vast, beyond her understanding. For a goddess like Artemis, though, comprehension was no issue. The prophecy's content isn't your concern, Artemis said, shutting down the topic. Let's go. Night will soon blanket the earth. With that, Artemis urged the stags, pulling the chariot into a trot. Daphne glanced back, lips pressed tight, paling from the effort. The huntress's chariot wasn't speeding full tilt, so they hadn't travelled far. The last time Daphne was near these foothills, she'd been with the mountain nymphs to see Narcissus's beauty, but if they kept going, she'd enter unfamiliar lands. Forget getting lost. Delphi would soon be beyond her ability to reach in a single day's sprint. This was bad. If she couldn't reach Apollo's sensory range in one go, her odds of escape would plummet. She didn't want to be prey for Artemis's unerring aim. She had to escape tonight. Artemis studied her for a moment but said nothing, seeking a place to rest. The goddess tugged the reins, guiding the chariot into nearby woods. From the forest depths came a mournful chant, a nymph's dirge. Daphne frowned, pleading. May I see what's happened? I know these nymphs. Artemis nodded, spurring the stags toward the song's source, in a forest clearing. Nymphs with varied hair colours held hands in a circle, singing a haunting lament. Daphne recognized a few mountain nymphs, spotting the radiant chariot. The nymphs fell silent, then rushed forward. It's the queen of beasts. She heard our prayers and came. Thank goodness, goddess, noble child of Leto, friend of nymphs, Artemis. You've come just in time. Please bring justice for our friend. Daphne leapt from the chariot, grabbing a familiar mountain nymph, ignoring her curious glances between her and Artemis, and whispered, What happened? It's poor Echo. She's gone. Daphne paused, recalling the nymph who could only repeat others' words. She looked at the clearing centre, where the nymphs had gathered. A neat pile of firewood stood, shaped like a mortal funeral pyre. But instead of a body, it was heaped with flowers. When nymphs perished, they returned to sky and earth, becoming stone, soil, or plants, leaving no bones. This was a funeral without a corpse. She loved Narcissus to madness, tried to embrace him, but that heartless boy shoved her away, spitting cruel words, saying he'd rather die than touch her. The other nymphs quieted, even Artemis listening intently. The story echoed through the twilight forest, chilling Daphne's spine. Another nymph sighed, continuing, "Poor thing." Echo fled to a nearby cave, covering her face. At first, you could see her shadow pacing and crying outside it. We left her alone, but days later, she was still sobbing, so I went to check. She was gone. Several nymphs nodded vigorously. The cave was empty, but near the hill where Echo vanished. We kept hearing her sobs. We spoke to her. She didn't answer, just cried. I asked Lord Parnassus what happened, and the mountain god said, Echo, heartbroken, wasted away. Her body and soul dissolved, leaving only the sound of her weeping for unreturned love. A mountain nymph shushed sharply. Listen, she's crying again. In the faint evening breeze, a frail, breaking whimper was barely audible. Selene's moon chariot was veiled in clouds, dimming the forest. The nymphs' sorrowful faces grew darker. Echo wasn't the only one drawn to Narcissus's beauty, nor the first he coldly rejected. Their earlier pity and mockery of Echo now turned to rage. Artemis, who wields the silver bow for justice, please punish Narcissus with your unerring arrows. He's just a demigod like us. Why is he so arrogant, dismissing us all? If he weren't so cruel, we wouldn't have lost a sister. When we told him Echo was gone, he said it had nothing to do with him. Artemis shook her head. Echo chose to chase love, leading to this end. It's not my place to act. The nymphs exchanged disappointed glances, realizing it was unfair to ask Leto's daughter, untouched by desire, to avenge Echo's pursuit of Narcissus. But, Artemis added, her tone shifting, if this Narcissus is as callous and proud as you say, unrepentant for Echo's fate, he'll one day pay for toying with others' hearts. Her gaze flicked to Daphne, her pupils narrowing. The spot where the golden-haired nymph had stood, listening quietly, was now empty. Daphne sprinted through the night. She'd never run so fast. Gaia's gifted robe made her body impossibly light. Running felt effortless. Trees and hills blurring into streaks as she dodged low branches and leapt over fallen logs, racing toward Delphi on instinct. Her strides outpaced her senses and thoughts. Her legs barely felt. She began to feel like she was flying, touching the earth only briefly, like a water bird rippling the waves, borrowing strength from the warm ground. An indescribable joy filled her. It wasn't just the cool breeze brushing her cheeks or the relief of freedom after days of dread. She was running to Apollo, to the one she loved, Apollo. The golden arrow's pierce made her heart pound faster at his 3 syllables. A lid she'd suppressed burst open, its contents spilling out, splashing with each step, tinting her vision and mind. She glimpsed golden hair and blue eyes in her periphery, a familiar, heart-stopping figure flickering against the dark, receding forest. If only she could run faster. She ached to see him, to tell him how her heart broke, thinking she'd never see him again. Wait. She blinked, eyes watering from the wind. Not her love. Daphne's. Barking shattered her thoughts. Hounds bayed behind her, from the shadowed trees, mingled with the panting of beasts running hot, their excited growls rolling as they locked onto prey, each sound sharper. Stop, or my hounds will tear you to shreds. The goddess's shout came from farther back, Artemis and her pack. A dog's hot breath grazed her ankle, goosebumps racing up her back and arms. Daphne didn't look back. She felt fangs nearing her skin, but just before they closed, she inhaled deeply, surging forward, pulling away. The furious howls faded, left behind. Yes, she could run faster. She hadn't known she could sprint so wildly. Even Artemis's hounds couldn't catch her. Daphne's lips curved into a grin. Her throat burned, lungs ached, legs threatened to give out. She knew she was exhausted but didn't feel it. Pushing her body to its limit was exhilarating. The universe seemed to expand and float, and she glided through it, straight to her goal. Towering stone pillars crashed into view. Her racing heart skipped a beat. Dizzily. She thought I made it. She ignored the guards' startled cries, breezing past the night watch, stepping onto the plaza before Delphi's temple. Her vision swam, colours and shadows blurring, but she didn't need eyes. She knew the temple's layout by heart. She darted through the colonnades flanking the main hall, heading for the inner sanctum behind Apollo's statue. The inner sanctum's golden doors were shut. Apollo had forbidden her from entering. The thought flickered and vanished. She had no time to dwell, stumbling up the 7 high steps. 7, Apollo's sacred number. Why was she thinking of that now? Her body hit its limit. Her legs trembled, unable to bear her weight, unable to run. She crawled, hands and knees closing the gap to the door. Only forward. Stopping now meant death. 1 step left. A blinding light flared behind her, shrinking her shadow on the metal door as if a star pursued her. Artemis's voice from the steps below was icy. 1 more step, and I release my bowstring. Daphne couldn't see, but Artemis didn't lie. The huntress's arrow was aimed at her back, ready to destroy her in an instant if loosed. Artemis no longer needed to fear Ananke. Daphne had ignored warnings, defied a goddess's command, giving ample reason to kill her. In the moment her fear slowed her, Artemis raised her voice, swift and clear. This nymph visited Eros's sanctuary in secret, acting suspiciously, and defied my orders by fleeing. Stay out of this. Now Apollo knew. She hadn't reached him before her secrets were exposed. Daphne closed her eyes, suddenly calm. This was better. She wanted to know what Apollo would choose after his sister's accusations. Would he still shield her? Let her be taken for punishment, or watch her die on his steps, whether Cassandra or Daphne? She craved his answer. The cat in the box only lived or died when observed. Her gamble was the same. She feared death most, but the worst outcome was just dying again. With that, she reached for the inner sanctum's door. The killing intent and pressure behind her surged, the arrow's release freezing her, lips and tongue included. She bit her tongue, broken syllables mixing with gasps, forming a faint plea. I beg you, Apollo, grant me your protection. Her sweat-soaked palm touched the door. Cold. The heavy metal didn't budge. She pushed again. Foolish. She heard Artemis's judgment, closed her eyes, and smiled, willing to lose. The bowstring hummed, death riding the arrow toward her. The silver arrow struck a radiant barrier. Her wrist was seized, and she was yanked behind the now open door. Chapter 21, So You Knew. The silver arrow struck the radiant barrier, and novas burst, lighting the night. Guards outside the temple stirred in commotion. Apollo! Facing his sister's accusing glare, Apollo declared calmly, I won't allow blood to stain these steps. Not even from you. Then hand the girl over. I'll deal with her elsewhere. Apollo's grip on Daphne's arm tightened slightly. She appeared unharmed, but the clash of divine forces was fierce. She'd fainted the moment she fell into his arms. Without his hold, she'd collapse. When Apollo stayed silent, Artemis's tone hardened. If you didn't hear, I'll say it again. Arguing here will only unsettle the mortals. Come inside, and we'll talk. With that, Apollo lifted Daphne and vanished into the depths of the corridor to the right of the inner sanctum. The door opened and closed. Moments later, Apollo reappeared at the threshold. Artemis still stood below the steps. He raised a brow. Coming in, the siblings locked eyes, unyielding, until Artemis closed hers, slinging her bow over her shoulder and ascending. The space beyond these doors was the holiest heart of Apollo's Delphi temple, wholly under his dominion. Even his twin, the huntress goddess, couldn't wield power freely here. Something to drink Apollo sat on a couch by the hall's side, casually raising a wine cup from the small table, as if merely hosting his sister in his new abode. Artemis, stone-faced, strode to him, arms crossed, staring down. I hope you know what you're doing. Apollo's lips curved faintly. Thanks for the concern. I'm perfectly clear-headed enough to shield a nymph who defied a goddess I promised to protect her, to negotiate with Eros to end the golden arrow's trouble for both of you. Yet the moment she got a chance, she disobeyed me and fled. His expression and tone stayed composed, like reciting a pre-drafted decree. Daphne's under the golden arrow's spell. It's natural she'd flee you to return to me. You shouldn't judge her too harshly. Artemis took a deep breath. You claim she's a victim of your feud with Eros, yet when you were preoccupied, she ran straight to his sanctuary without hesitation. That's not suspicious enough, Apollo replied stiffly. When she wakes, I'll have her explain herself, and then I'll judge if her story holds and decide whether to punish her. Artemis scoffed. I'm almost certain, no matter how absurd her excuses, you'll find a way to accept them. Apollo's face tightened. Artemis! Her words grew sharper. Merciless. Have you never considered she might not be innocent? She could be Eros's bait. Every move orchestrated by him, designed to seduce you, make you fall in love, so the love god can exact his revenge. The hall fell silent. Apollo stared into the pale gold liquid in his cup, his expression unreadable. Artemis watched him, then whispered in disbelief. So you knew? Leto's son's lashes flickered, but he didn't meet her gaze. Artemis snatched the cup from his hand. It clinked against the table, a sharp chime, wine splashing over the rim, leaving a mottled trail like clumsy footprints, the last drop staining the folds of Apollo's robe over his chest. He brushed the spot, the stain vanishing, before finally looking up. No need to take it out on me. Artemis nearly laughed in exasperation. Soon after our birth, you foresaw something and avoided entanglements with beautiful maidens. Now look at you. I don't want you hurt, but if you won't listen, fine, I'll stay out of it. She turned to leave, pausing at the hall's door to declare coldly, if she ever breaks your heart or tarnishes our immortal dignity and authority, and you can't act, I'll kill her for you. Her soul drifted free again. In an unfamiliar room, likely within Apollo's temple, Daphne's body lay on a cushioned couch. Familiar with the sensation now, she calmly floated, circling to examine her sleeping form. Eros was right. It looked eerily peaceful, like eternal slumber. She couldn't fully separate herself from this appearance, which unnerved her, so she looked away. Muffled voices came from outside. One familiar, Artemis. Tension gripped her. She drifted to the door to listen, but it was shut, too far to hear clearly. She tried passing through, only to hit an invisible barrier. After multiple attempts from different angles, she remained stuck, like a glitch in a video game. Unable to move forward, her soul couldn't stray far from her body. A loud thud. Something struck heavily outside. An argument. She shrank back. Artemis's voice rose, and Daphne pressed her spirit against the door, catching fragments. Authority. If you can't act, I'll kill her for you. She froze. What did that mean? The worst possibility hit her. Artemis had laid out all of Daphne's suspicious actions, convincing Apollo, for divine authority or some other reason. The twins agreed Apollo would deal with her, or Artemis would act for him later. The door opened, Apollo's golden hair filling her vision. She darted to the wall, then remembered he couldn't see her. Apollo approached the couch, edging along the wall to see his face. She searched for clues in his expression. His usual poker face was in place, but his intense gaze on the sleeping girl was almost unnerving, lips tight, as if suppressing inner turmoil. Bad sign. She tried returning to her body to wake, but circling above it brought no sinking sensation of waking. She could only watch Apollo lean down, reaching toward her. Her soul didn't need breath, yet she felt choked, a dizzy throb piercing her temples. His fingers brushed near her nose, then withdrew. He'd only checked if she was breathing. She drifted to the couch's far end, calming herself, then looked back. Apollo still stood silently, staring. His features had softened slightly, his gaze unfocused, lashes blinking slowly, almost lost. He hadn't decided her fate. There was room to maneuver. As she strategized, Apollo reached out again. She watched tensely as his faintly glowing fingertips grazed her temple, plucking a leaf from her tangled hair. He'd stared at it for ages, perhaps unable to tolerate its presence any longer. The sensation triggered her return. Her footing vanished, and she plummeted. Daphne's eyes snapped open. She sat up, scanning the room, her gaze landing last on the golden-haired, blue-eyed god. Apollo. Meeting her eyes. His face turned colder. He cut off her prepared speech. Before you say a word, Think carefully. Don't dare lie to me again." Stunned by his bluntness, heat rushed to her cheeks, tears welling in her eyes. Apollo looked away stiffly, then declared with equal coldness, "You're exhausted, unfit for questioning now. I'll summon you later." He turned to leave. She grabbed his robe's hem, voice trembling. "Ask me now." He glanced back, silently questioning if she was serious. "If you leave, I won't sleep, and an exhausted person might slip up. Right." He narrowed his eyes, then sat at the couch's foot. "Speak." His curt, hostile tone spared no extra words. Daphne lowered her gaze, voice hoarse. "I broke my promise to you, visiting Eros' sanctuary without permission. Your noble sister Artemis took me away. I feared I'd never see you again, so I escaped back to Delphi," Apollo said coldly. "I want an explanation. I wanted to ask Eros why the golden arrow made me sprout branches, turning me into a tree-like monster. It might be tied to my nature. Maybe. I'm not a river god's daughter. I thought he might know something, not a lie." She'd sought Eros for answers about the sprouting. "I already told you Eros's explanation. You had no reason to go to him," Apollo said, brows furrowing. When angry, his blue eyes turned icy, like a frozen lake in winter, chilling to behold. "Tell the truth, I am." "But that wasn't all I wanted to ask," Daphne said, her lips quivering. She inhaled sharply, her voice rising. "I know you've always been wary, suspecting my ties to Eros aren't simple, that I'm his poison meant to seduce you. It's true, you saved me, and I was struck by the arrow. It's too convenient. I find it strange too. Your suspicion is fair. If I were someone else, I'd think I had ulterior motives." Apollo stayed silent, his expression blank, like a detached spectator judging her sincerity. Humiliation flared in her chest. She couldn't tell if it was Daphne's lovesick devotion or Cassandra's pride, unwilling to grovel. That stung. Her all-in struggle, her true and feigned emotions, might just be a farce to a god. No need for theatrics. Hot tears spilled with each blink. She swiped at them with her hand, but her cheeks only grew wetter. Giving up. She let out a self-deprecating laugh. Apollo's eyes flickered, but when she looked at him through tearful eyes, he wore the same flawless, impassive mask. She glared, unblinking, as if holding his gaze would keep tears from clouding her vision, locking them in a primal standoff. "I can't prove my innocence, so I wanted to confront Eros, demand his intentions, what he planned to use me for. To him, it's just firing an arrow. To me—" Her breath hitched, voice high and fractured. "It's my feelings, the difference between life and death. I just wanted answers, but I messed up. Eros didn't answer my prayer. I got caught by your sister. I can't prove I'm telling the truth. If I'd let her take me, I wouldn't even have a chance to explain. But maybe I shouldn't have come back. You never wanted to give me even a sliver of love. Now how will you reject me, scold me, punish me, or will you kill me? I can't bear to think." She laughed bitterly, her pale green eyes blazing with the fire Apollo remembered from their first meeting. Each flicker brought fresh tears, streaming from her lashes down flushed cheeks, crashing somewhere, rippling with heart-stopping force. "You don't trust me. You won't return my feelings. I get it. But I hurt too. A god as mighty as you might forget or not understand what it's like for an ant, but I feel pain." She clutched her chest, as if to rip out the turmoil and show him. Apollo remained silent, his lips unknowingly tightening into a rigid line. Daphne seemed to tire, no longer meeting his gaze. She closed her eyes, her voice low and rough. "I'm confused. What even is my love for you?" Apollo's pupils contracted involuntarily. "You're right. It's probably fake, an illusion forced by a golden arrow. But the pain when you coldly reject me, the joy when you're kind, they're so real. I can't tell truth from lie. So I wonder, why me? What did I do to deserve this fate? Why do I have to love you?" Daphne buried her face in her hands. The room filled with her broken sobs and nasal breaths. Clearing her throat, she lifted her red-rimmed eyes, meeting Apollo's gaze. Tears welled again, but she forced a fearless front. "I've said all I can. Believe me or not, it's up to you." A long silence. No immediate verdict came. Gritting her teeth, she asked directly, So, what will you do with me? Chapter 22. He loves me. He loves me not. Apollo seemed caught off guard by her question, momentarily at a loss. What do you want me to do with you? He countered after a pause. Daphne stared, unsure if he was genuinely asking or mocking her earlier confession, so clearly aimed at deflecting suspicion. She hesitated, then chose honesty. I hope you won't kill me. Apollo frowned, displeased, so he hadn't planned to. She bit her lip, testing further. If you never want to see me again, I'll return to Arcadia. You needn't worry about the golden arrow. I'll avoid your name and never appear before you again. His brow furrowed deeper. She quickly lowered her head. As long as it's not death. I'm at your mercy. A low chuckle came from above. Apollo stepped close, near enough to touch, in his temple. He didn't suppress his aura, his presence crashing over her like a tidal wave, making her tremble yet crave the radiant clarity of his light. To touch, to be touched, to be embraced by that glow. As if hearing her wish, his glowing fingers lifted her chin, forcing her to face his divine gaze. Staring into stars could burn the eyes, and she instinctively tried to look away, but Apollo's grip tightened. She pressed her lips together, enduring his scrutiny. His gaze lingered where his fingers met her jaw, leaving a vivid red mark, like a delicate, finicky flower. Faint redness lingered under her eyes. She'd stopped crying, but her anxious eyes shimmered, ready to flood at his slightest reaction. Yet this was the same girl who'd outrun Artemis's hounds and arrows. He recalled that before the golden arrow. Her eyes hadn't looked at him like this. Apollo abruptly released her. As you said, you can't prove your words aren't lies. A half-beat of silence stole her breath. But there's no solid evidence you're acting on Eros's orders. Daphne blinked woodenly, her clenched fists loosening, feeling returned, and she suddenly noticed the sting of nails digging into her palms. Pain only the living could feel. So, her voice rasped. I accept your explanation, Apollo said, seeming irked by his own concession, but he quickly masked any flicker of emotion behind a composed facade, adding firmly, That doesn't mean I fully believe you. Before she could exhale, he declared coldly, You must pay for breaking your oath. Daphne's lashes lowered, her mind flashing to tales of divine punishment, read in her past life, heard as a nymph, or Telphusa's fate. You're unfit to stay in Delphi. I'll arrange another place for you. Until then, you're forbidden from leaving this hall. She fell silent, surprised, then murmured, Yes, I'll obey. Finally, swear by Styx's name that, without my permission, you'll have no contact with Eros. The oath of Styx was the most binding, terrifying vow. Even gods faced a year of slumber and 9 years' exile for breaking it. What would happen to a nymph, not immune to death? Daphne didn't know and didn't ask. I heard swearing by Styx requires her river's water. Apollo waved a hand, and a shallow goblet of clear water appeared. Splash the water on the ground. Hold my hand, and Styx will hear your oath through me. Daphne complied, hesitating before reaching for him. He seemed impatient, grabbing her hand, silently urging her to speak the vow. Daphne, daughter of Gaia and Ladon, swear by Styx that, unless permitted by radiant Apollo, I'll have no dealings with Eros. As the oath took shape, an icy gaze seemed to watch her, a chilling presence creeping up her spine, nearly freezing her, clearing her throat to shake the bone-deep cold stiffening her tongue. She added clearly, Without permission, I won't visit Eros's sanctuaries or temples or pray to him or accept his gifts. If I dare break this vow, let my blood, like this water, spill and flow freely. Apollo's grip tightened, his gaze flickering with unguarded surprise. He hadn't asked for such a brutal oath. Daphne gave a faint, weary smile. Is that enough? Apollo said, releasing her hand and stepping to the door in a blink. I'll summon you once your new place is decided. She bowed her head respectfully. Yes, keep your oath. Apollo left the room, diverting more of his consciousness to answer devotees' prayers. After his first prophecy, followers who witnessed the golden light had grown, and he needed to display miracles elsewhere to cement his renown. A god's vast mind could grant blessings through statues and altars with little time. He blinked, refocusing on his Delphi form. Abruptly, He recalled Daphne had fled from the far side of Parnassus. Even if nymphs didn't eat like humans, being hunted by Artemis would have drained her. She might sprout branches again without energy. With that, Apollo reappeared in her room. The wall's oil lamp flared and nearly guttered from his divine arrival, its flickering light casting shadows on the couch. He'd been gone mere moments, yet the golden-haired girl was already slumped in deep sleep. She lay curled on her side, using a folded wool blanket as a pillow, brows furrowed as if troubled in dreams. Whether from cold or unease, she huddled like an infant, messy hair draped over her shoulder and trailing behind. Gaia's faintly glowing robe had ridden up, bunching at her knees, exposing her calves and a sliver of skin above. Apollo froze, as if snapping out of a trance. Swiftly, he grabbed a pillow from the couch's end, deftly swapping it with the blanket. With a flick of his wrists, he spread the blanket over her, leaving only her head uncovered. Daphne slept soundly, oblivious. Only after leaving did he realize he'd forgotten to leave the ambrosial nectar where she'd see it, his reason for returning. He pulled out the golden bottle, stared at it, lips tightening in irritation. Yanking off the wax seal, he tipped his head back, gulping the sweet liquid without ceremony, yet he still felt parched. Daphne woke to birdsong. She instinctively touched her head. No branches today. Good. Stretching. She rose and fumbled in the dark to a large clay jar in the corner, washing with cool spring water. It banished sleep's haze. Wiping her face with a fine linen cloth, she scanned the room. This was Apollo's new arrangement for her. Another stone house, similar in size and layout to the one on Delphi's sunny slope, but with richer, cozier furnishings. A mountain spring lay just outside. She'd lived here for half a month. The house sat in a quiet, hilly valley, its entrance leading to Apollo's pastures. Opening the door, Daphne saw herds of cattle and sheep ambling through the morning's milky light across rolling hills, casting long, jagged shadows on the grassy slopes. A shepherd with a staff and bell was a tiny dot among them. Daphne could only watch from afar. She couldn't leave the valley. No matter how she followed visible paths, she always looped back to the starting point, a divine spell by Apollo. She'd tried shouting greetings at the valley's edge, but the shepherds didn't react. They couldn't hear her. Apollo clearly wanted her isolated. In short, she was under house arrest. As divine punishment from an Olympian, it was lenient. Her ties to Eros remained suspect, and she had broken a vow to a god. So Apollo's strict stance was natural. In Delphi, she could play with rock giants and nymphs. This nameless valley had none. She didn't mind solitude, but over time, boredom crept in. She didn't hide her discontent from Apollo. He visited every 3 or 4 days, usually. He'd hand her another bottle of nectar, then fall silent, as if waiting for her to spark a conversation. Unlike her earlier eagerness, Daphne matched his silence, ignoring the nectar, sitting by the window with her knees drawn up, pretending not to notice his occasional glances. After several rounds of this tense stalemate, Apollo would leave, sometimes visibly annoyed, his icy presence seeming to drop the room's temperature by a season. Yet he'd return days later, his tolerance for silence noticeably thinner. This morning, shortly after sunrise, Apollo pushed open the door, familiar with the house. His gaze flicked to her usual window spot. She wasn't there. "I was about to go for a walk," Daphne said, emerging from the inner room, meeting his eyes. Their gazes flickered, a brief, awkward pause, unsure where to look. Apollo scanned her outfit. She'd added a shawl against the valley's chilly morning breeze. Daphne took an audible breath, her tone calm. "Care to join me?" Apollo blinked, nodding almost instantly. Sure. They stepped over dew-kissed grass, walking toward the rising sun. Daphne lagged half a step behind, pausing to touch branches stretching toward her, or to nudge budding shrubs brushing her calves. Each time the gap widened, Apollo would stop, glancing back, as if waiting for her to catch up. After 3 such pauses, Daphne finally drew level with him. For a moment, she wanted to ask if he realized this was their first time walking side by side. But she pressed her lips shut, letting the silence, thick as the valley's morning mist, linger. It had rained the night before, the air heavy, ready to drip. Their quiet held the charged stillness before a storm. Daphne sketched Apollo in her peripheral vision. He towered over her, his jawline sharp and taut, as if restraining something. One poke, and his defences might crumble. But she refused to make the first move. She knew this strained silence was a good sign. If she behaved and reverted to her old warmth, cozying up to him, Apollo would stop his cold front, maybe even let her return to Delphi, but that would only reset things. His unprecedented leniency, sheltering her, letting her into the temple's heart, accepting her explanation, was progress, but not enough. It was time for the next phase. She'd always been the one advancing, yielding, but that couldn't last forever. She needed him to see that even love born of a golden arrow could erode. Her fervent confession had laid Daphne's cards bare before him. Clinging to him now would only make her seem scheming. It was Apollo's turn to show his hand. Daphne bent, plucking a white daisy, twirling its stem between her fingers, then began pulling petals. Apollo noticed her mutilating the flower, but waited until it was half bald to ask, "What are you doing?" "A kind of divination," she said, smiling up at him. "Haven't you heard of it?" "He loves me," she said, locking eyes with him, slowly tugging off another petal, as if performing a gentle torture, her murmur alternating with each pluck. "He loves me, not, he loves me." Apollo suddenly snatched the daisy. Daphne tried to count the remaining petals to deduce the result, but his strong, bony fingers hid the flower completely. Nothing to see. She held his gaze for a moment, then silently turned away, picking another daisy, resuming her petal pulling. Apollo looked irked. "That divination doesn't work." She ignored him. White petals falling again. "I love him. I don't love him. I love him. Apollo took a deep breath. "I don't love him." Daphne pinched the last petal, smirking. "Guess it's not accurate." A beat of silence, but you can foresee it. "Right." Apollo's expression didn't shift. What Daphne asked, as lightly as she could, "Can you predict when I'll stop loving you?" The dark gold rimming his pupils flared vividly. He turned away, saying flatly, "I don't waste my power on such things." Chapter 23. An Unimagined Possibility. Daphne and Apollo parted ways, once again on sour terms. Instead of returning to the cabin, she wandered aimlessly through the valley. For the past 10 days, her routine had been strolling while plotting her next moves. On this post-rain morning, clusters of wildflowers and mushrooms sprouted under the trees, and, oddly, they stirred a pang of loneliness in her. Passing through a patch of daisies, she recalled Apollo's parting glance. Not so much anger, but the bafflement of facing something utterly confounding. Was she too hard on him? He was a god, unversed in humility. Softening a bit, guiding him gently as before, would be smarter. Maybe, without realizing it, the golden arrow had made her project unneeded expectations onto him. Daphne didn't crave equality or respect, nor should she be irked by his lack of understanding. Pinpointing the source of her unease, she resolved to tweak her approach next meeting. She'd offer subtle olive branches. Alienating or outright offending Apollo would backfire. Then, how to push forward. Eros's task had 2 parts: make Apollo fall in love with her, then abandon him, breaking his heart. She'd rarely dwelt on the second part, as even hypotheticals were painful under the arrow's sway. But with Apollo's attitude shifting, however bittersweet, she had to start planning. She could pull away the moment he got serious, or give him a sweet illusion, letting him sink into it before revealing its falsehood, which was crueler, unattained desire or loss after possession, as if mirroring her mood. Clouds gathered by afternoon, drizzling softly. Daphne ducked into a cave, arms crossed, watching rain trickle like a crystal curtain over the rocks, her thoughts drifting. Her biggest worry was Artemis. The goddess had grudgingly accepted Apollo's protection of her, but if Daphne showed intent to ditch him, what would Artemis do? Daphne shuddered, closing her eyes. If Eros missed the window to extract her, Artemis might fulfill her parting threat and kill her for Apollo. At that point, the huntress could be more dangerous than her brother. Playing a heartbreaker was one thing, but risking injury or another death she'd taken on a ridiculously tough mission. Daughter of Gaia! A voice came from behind. Startled, she stumbled back, nearly tripping on the cave floor. An old man in a hooded cloak steadied her, his voice tinged with wry resignation. I appeared too suddenly and scared you. It was the mountain god of Parnassus. This valley was still his domain, so his ghostly appearances made sense. Why are you here? Our shared mother wishes to see you. Daphne blinked, stunned. Gaia wants to see me. The mountain god turned, heading deeper into the cave. Follow me. Don't fall behind. Incredibly, the cave structure shifted with each step he took. After 2 glances, Daphne felt dizzy, lowering her gaze to trail him closely. After about 20 steps, he stopped. You must walk the rest alone. Gaia doesn't intend to see me. Thanking him. Daphne tightened her shawl and ventured down a narrow passage, soon bursting into a vast space. Before she could take in her surroundings, a solemn yet gentle presence enveloped her. This was deep underground, surrounded by earth, yet not dark, soft. Glowing motes floated around. Daphne, my daughter. The same sighing voice from her memories echoed through the cave, its resonance with her eardrums oddly nostalgic. This should be our first meeting. I'm accustomed to hiding my form, so you cannot see me. But now, as always and in the future, I never cease watching you, just as I watch all lives born from me. Gaia, Daphne murmured, unable to call her mother. The earth goddess laughed softly. I know your concerns, child. No matter where your soul hails from, you were shaped through me, making you my daughter. You... Daphne cut off, horrified, unable to utter another word. Gaia knew, without my consent. How could Eros succeed? You should know another Eros, born from chaos, exists. The essence of desire is procreation, driving creation and renewal, but also conflict and death. The primal Eros, alongside Ananke, forms the world's foundation. His own desires became a hindrance, so he shed most of his will and persona, sinking into the ocean's depths around me, until stirred by Uranus's fallen roots of desire, reborn from foam with the same name. That's the Eros you know. Why was Gaia telling her this? Daphne listened, bewildered, though faint, when Eros asked me to house your soul and craft your body from an unnamed plant to toy with Leto's son. The primal Eros signalled approval, so I agreed. You mean Daphne's role isn't so simple? Gaia's voice was kind. You shouldn't know those things. A chill ran through her, mixed with confusion. If there's some grand, mysterious scheme, why tell me this when you fled across the earth, chased by Leto's daughter? I heard your heart's lament. I believe my children deserve freedom to choose. Gaia paused. Moreover, I touched your soul. Its colour is unique, stirring, perhaps unnecessary pity in me. Child, you can abandon Eros's plan. He doesn't truly care if every prank succeeds, but the primal gods. If something is fated, no choice will alter it. I want to know your will, Daphne faltered, words stumbling. This body's lifespan is short. If I don't fulfill Eros's task, I'll truly die. Gaia sighed gently. Even if brief compared to my other children, if you wish. You can live peacefully in this world with that body. How brief, Gaia mused, then answered. By mortal reckoning, about 10 years. An unimagined possibility unfurled with the Earth Goddess's words. Cassandra's life had ended abruptly at the cusp of a new opportunity, leaving her resentful, so she'd leapt at Eros's offer, faced with death or a risky shot at rebirth. Most would choose the latter. She was no exception. But what if the other side wasn't death she could opt out? Escaping Eros's absurd drama. No more fearing Apollo's wrath or Artemis's piercing arrow. She could outlast the golden arrow's effect, living nearly a decade in this unaging body however she chose. Could she really? Apollo's first prophecy was clear: a new god would soon join Olympus's snow-capped halls. Hera, with her ox-like eyes, ordered her nymphs to scour caves for nymphs or goddesses bearing Zeus's offspring, so far finding nothing. Apollo monitored the queen's moves, even preparing to rescue a divine child from Hera or Ares. Not that he craved more half-siblings, but their ascent to Olympus, recognized by Zeus, was vital. He had to see his first 3 prophecies fulfilled to fully claim prophetic power. Though not stretched thin, Apollo's visits to Daphne every few days lacked a convincing rationale. He wasn't blind to his own oddity. Her current attitude verged on insolent, their meetings only breeding frustration, if not for the ravens near the cabin catching suppressed sobs after he left. He'd almost believe she'd shaken the golden arrow's effect and was maliciously toying with him. Most absurd was himself, knowing no warmth or smiles awaited, yet finding himself outside her cabin time and again. For the first time since his birth, Apollo felt powerless, like watching a pebble roll down a steep slope across a chasm, with no wind or push, falling for no reason. He could only watch it crash into the valley, waiting for it to shatter. He couldn't grasp what Daphne was hung up on. If she asked, he'd let her return to Delphi. If she treated him as she did post-Arrow, he'd be kinder. Instead, she played mute or, like yesterday, jabbed him with silly flower divinations and soft, cutting words. This pleased no one. Generosity, not harshness, was his nature, but he couldn't explain why he was pointlessly bickering with a nymph. Sometimes, he even considered diving into the current. Immortal and untouchable, what harm could a frail nymph do? Even if it was Eros's trap, then he'd recall the searing agony of prophetic visions, Eros's triumphant laughter, and he'd burn with shame for such weak thoughts, wanting to rip them out and destroy them. Irritated. Apollo paused, scanning his surroundings. He'd wandered into Delphi's deep woods, the foliage unfamiliar, a path he hadn't noticed. 2 steps forward, pushing aside branches. His expression shifted. Before him lay the cursed pool. Perfect timing. With the temple built and Hera distracted, now was ideal to purify it. Apollo nocked an arrow, its tip glowing with pure light, aimed at the pool's centre. His hand froze mid-release. A fleeting glance caught the water's beguiling illusion in his vision. The pause lasted a heartbeat. Apollo refocused, aiming at the pool's darkest aura. The string snapped, the cleansing silver arrow arcing sharply, plunging into the ripples. Crack! Several sharp cries like shattering glass. An unseen force wailed, rising and dissolving, the forest's oppressive weight vanishing instantly. The curse was broken. Apollo relaxed his grip on the bow, glancing at the water again. The ripples from his arrow stilled. The surface now a truer mirror, reflecting the sky's vast blue, tinting the figure within azure. Only him, no one else. Chapter 24. The consequences of Apollo's anger are usually severe. After tossing and turning countless times, Daphne bolted upright. Outside, midnight's veil cloaked the earth, seeping into the unlit stone cabin. Sleep eluded her, her restlessness growing with each moment. Since parting with Gaia 2 days ago, her mind had been in turmoil. The Earth Goddess's revelations had shattered her single-minded plan. In the dark, Daphne touched her chest again. A pendant hung there, a thumb-sized, half-finger-thick triangle of hard clay, suspended on a thin silver chain, weighty against her skin. Gaia's parting gift, a protective charm. Smash the clay, and it would unleash aid in her time of need. It was something Eros entrusted to me for you. How you use it is your choice. Daphne knew instantly what lay inside. Eros had foreseen in her dreams that Apollo, even if he sheltered her, would cut off their contact. The love god promised a lead arrowhead for emergencies, letting her erase her feelings for Apollo herself. She shook the pendant by her ear. Something hard rattled against the clay's hollow. The metallic clink brought a flicker of reassurance. Now, she finally held a shred of control over her fate. That thought kept sleep at bay. Wrapping a shawl around herself, she stepped out for a walk. The night sky swirled with clouds, darker than usual. Leaving the cabin, she checked her surroundings with her torch, noting no birds. Ravens were plentiful here, often gathering at her door each morning or soaring past her window, their black feathers glinting. Ravens, Apollo's sacred animals. She suspected he used these sleek birds to spy on her. But not tonight. Even if her midnight stroll was just insomnia-driven, with no divine watchers, she felt lighter, her steps toward the valley's mouth quickening. Halfway there, she froze. In the lightless valley, shadowy clusters moved. What was stirring at this hour? She doused her torch. Torn briefly between retreating and investigating, she crept forward, gripping her dagger. Unless it was a monster like Python, She could protect herself. At worst, she was confident in fleeing, and she could pray to Apollo for help. Polished by the golden arrow, that thought gave her a surge of security. Without light, navigating the grassy slope felt perilous. Blades brushing her ankles, the winds wail through the valley, and odd noises ahead fueled wild, eerie imaginings. But curiosity trumped fear. She reached the valley's mouth. The rustle of shadows trampling grass and animal breaths grew clearer. She crouched behind a jutting rock. Any farther, and Apollo's magic would loop her back. As if hiding from the heavens, dense clouds shrouded the pass. Unable to see, Daphne lit her torch and cautiously peeked out. The sight stunned her. Speechless rows of cows marched in orderly silence, heading into the distance, with no shepherds or dogs in sight. Closer inspection revealed something stranger. Their hooves faced backward, defying nature. Daphne gaped as they left bizarre, reversed tracks in the grass, unsure whether to find it absurd or terrifying. As the last cows passed, heading away from the shepherd's camp, it hit her. Wait, where are they going? Then she spotted a tiny figure trailing the herd, easily missed among the cattle. At first she thought distance shrank them, but no, it was size. A baby, hovering in mid-air. The shock was so great, she forgot her torch still burned. The infant noticed the light and zipped toward her. Normal babies didn't fly, and Apollo's spell should have hidden her from humans. Daphne instinctively stepped back, then felt foolish, caught by a baby. Why run? She stood firm, watching it approach. A black-haired, green-eyed boy, barely old enough to toddle, his cherubic face wrapped in an oversized chiton, but his sharp gaze, sizing her up, lacked any childish innocence. She felt almost seen through. A divine aura clung to him. "Who are you?" "Why are you here?" he asked, seeing her stunned stare, his crisp, slightly soft child's voice carrying a commanding edge. "I'm Daphne, a local nymph." "And you?" "What did you do to these cows?" the boy answered candidly. "I'm tasked by Apollo, son of Leto, to bring these 500 cows to Delphi. The temple's holding a grand festival, and these are for sacrifice." Was that true doubt stirred? Apollo rarely shared his divine duties with her, especially during their recent silent standoff. A festival might be planned without her knowing, but 500 cows in this world. Livestock were precious. Even Apollo's first prophecy hadn't warranted such extravagance. And those backward hooves, seeing her skepticism, the boy grinned good-naturedly. "Don't believe me. Come to Delphi with me. I can't leave here." His green eyes gleamed with interest, as if piecing something together, his tone playfully drawn out. "Oh, you're trapped here by Apollo." He blinked cheerfully. "If you want out, I can help." Daphne eyed his tiny frame, surprised. He lifted his chin, humming confidently. "Don't underestimate me. Nothing in this world can't be stolen by me, prisoners included. Who are you? Exactly." "This time," he answered crisply, "Hermes, son of Maia, daughter of Atlas, and Zeus, my father." "Hermes?" Daphne's mind flashed to a familiar orange logo from her past life. Her job had made her savvy about brand origins, and she recalled this name. Unbelievable. But this tiny figure was that Hermes. No divine halo yet. He was newly born, not yet an Olympian. She vaguely recalled Hermes was swift, a messenger of the gods, but that was after Zeus's recognition. "There's no festival," she said, frowning at the retreating herd. "You're stealing these cows overnight, I think. Apollo will be furious." And Apollo's anger usually had severe consequences. Hermes sighed like a magician whose trick was exposed, shrugging with casual nonchalance. His youthful appearance clashed comically with his laid-back demeanour, yet it carried an unnerving edge. Watching her reaction, he wove his words. "I just wanted to surprise my dear brother. Could you pretend you didn't see me, and keep tonight's meeting our little secret pausing?" The newborn god added with a friendly smile. "If you stay quiet about what you saw, I'll reward you later. Of course, there's another way to thank you." Hermes met her gaze, his emerald eyes cat-like, his smile laced with intent. Daphne's eyes flickered, tightening her grip on the torch. "Son of Maia, I ask you to steal me out," she heard herself say, before deciding she needed one final confirmation. Apollo first heard frantic prayers. "Great Apollo, the 500 cows you entrusted to us, they're gone this morning. We followed the tracks but found nothing, I swear. We heard no strange noises in the night. We know nothing. Please, have mercy." Apollo's brow furrowed. He sent a wisp of his consciousness as a raven, soaring to the shepherd's pasture. As they claimed, hoofprints crisscrossed the grass, oddly uneven. Following them, the raven circled back to the starting point. Who dared steal his possessions? Fury surged toward the faceless thief. Then he remembered Daphne's cabin was near the pasture. As a nymph, she might have noticed something hidden from mortal eyes. The raven flew through the valley's mouth, landing deftly at her window. Helios's sun chariot cast its first rays. When Daphne usually woke, the raven peered inside, then flapped into the inner room. The cabin was empty. Perhaps she'd gone for an early walk. Apollo suppressed the urge to check immediately, driving the raven to scour the valley, searching for any trace of golden hair. Nothing. In his pasture, under his nose, Daphne and 500 cows had vanished,